I'm Mila, a 36-year-old woman living what I thought was a fairly ordinary life. I married my college sweetheart Jack, a man who was once my rock. We didn't have kids, just the two of us and our dreams, living in a house that was finally ours, mortgage-free. This house was a symbol of our years together, bought on a mortgage that we aggressively paid down, especially after I used the inheritance from my dad to make the final payments. Our life was simple, but content. Or so I believed. Jack, tall and usually unflappable with his finance job, was my partner in everything. We had our share of arguments like any couple, but I always felt we were a team. His parents, George and Martha, had become like my own. George, a burly, kind-hearted man with a booming laugh, and Martha, a gentle soul who had taken me under her wing from day one. Our relationship was one of mutual respect and affection. Tonight was supposed to be a small celebration, just George and us, marking the end of our mortgage payments. The house was warmly lit, and I had spent the day cooking George's favorite dishes. I remember glancing at the clock, noting Jack's unusual lateness. George arrived first, cheerful as always, but with an undercurrent of concern for his son's tardiness. We chatted in the kitchen, George regaling me with stories of his youth, his laughter filling the room. But as the night grew older, my anxiety crept in. Finally, the doorbell rang, and I rushed to open it, expecting Jack, maybe with a story of traffic or a last-minute work emergency. What I saw instead felt like a scene from a movie. Jack stood there, not alone, but with a young, stylish woman clinging to his arm. She had an air of confidence, almost defiance, as she scanned our home, her eyes lingering on the pictures of our life together on the walls. "Jack, what's going on?" I managed to get out, my voice a mix of confusion and rising anger. Jack looked different. His usual calm demeanor was replaced with a cold, almost cruel smirk. "This is Lana," he said nonchalantly, his grip on her waist possessive. "She's going to be my wife." The words hit me like a freight train. Wife? Jack, are you joking? What about us? Our life together? George, who had come to see what the commotion was about, looked as shocked as I felt. "Jack, son, what are you saying?" Lana finally spoke, her voice sharp and businesslike. "Looks like a nice place. We'll probably change a few things once it's ours." Jack's next words felt surreal. "Mila, I want a divorce. It's time you left." I was stunned, my mind racing. "Divorce, Jack? We built this life together, and you want to throw it away for her?" George's face was red with anger and disbelief. "Jack, think about what you're doing. This is madness." Jack shrugged dismissively. "My mind's made up. Start packing, Mila. This house isn't yours anymore." I stood there rooted to the spot, as George took my arm. "May, let's go, you don't need to take this." We left the house, my home, a place filled with memories now tainted by betrayal. I spent the night at George and Martha's, their kindness a small comfort in the storm of my suddenly shattered life. I woke up in George and Martha's guest room, feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. The events of last night replayed in my mind, each detail a fresh jab of pain. I could hear George and Martha in the kitchen, their voices a low murmur. Dragging myself out of bed, I stumbled into the kitchen where George was making coffee and Martha was setting the table. They both looked up as I entered, their faces a mix of concern and anger. "Morning, May?" George said gruffly, handing me a cup of coffee. "Slept any?" Martha came over and gave me a hug. "That boy has lost his mind, Maa. You don't deserve this." "I don't know what to do, Martha. My whole life just turned upside down." George slammed his cup on the table, his usual jovial demeanor gone. "We can't let him get away with this, Emma. He can't just throw you out like yesterday's garbage." Martha nodded, her eyes fierce. "You've put too much into that house, into that marriage. It's not right." I felt a surge of anger thinking about Jack and Lana in my house. I paid for most of that house, my inheritance, my savings. "That's it. You have rights, Mila. That house is as much yours as it is his, George exclaimed. Martha was quick to agree. Yes, you need to fight for what's yours. Don't let that woman take everything from you. I started to feel a fire building inside me, fueled by their support. You're right. I won't let Jack and his mistress walk all over me. George stood up, determination on his face. We'll get a lawyer, someone who can sort this mess out. You won't be alone in this, may I? Martha squeezed my hand. We're with you every step of the way. That boy needs a lesson on how to treat people. Sitting there with them, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, I could get through this. But I knew it was going to be a long, hard fight. The morning at George and Martha's had stirred something in me, a sense of resolve I hadn't felt in a long time. I spent the day buried in financial records, piecing together every contribution I'd made towards our home. The dining table was littered with bank statements, mortgage documents, and old receipts, tangible proof of my investment in what was supposed to be our shared dream. Look at this, MAA, George said, meticulously going through each document. You've paid more than half of the mortgage, and that's not even counting your inheritance. You have a strong claim to the house. I nodded, my fingers tracing the figures that represented years of my life. I'm going to call Jack back. He needs to understand, he can't just erase me from his life and take everything we built together, I declared. Martha, who had been brewing some coffee, set a cup in front of me. Be clear, and stand your ground, Mila. He's used to walking all over you, but not this time. I dialed Jack's number. It rang twice before he picked up. Mila, what do you want? His voice was dismissive, cold. I took a deep breath, steadying my nerves. Jack, I've been looking over our finances. It turns out I've put more money into the house, my inheritance, my savings. It adds up to me owning 2/3 of the house. If you want to keep the house, you need to buy out my share. That's $266,000. I could almost hear his sneer through the phone. You think you can just demand money out of the blue? This isn't a demand, Jack. It's what I'm owed. It's fair. You can either pay me, or we sell the house and split the money. Your choice. Jack's voice was laced with annoyance. Fine, you'll get your money, but after this, we're done. I hung up, my heart racing. He agreed to pay, I said, half in shock. George was beaming with pride. You did good, Mila, standing up to him like that. Martha came over and hugged me. I'm proud of you, Mila. You're taking control of your life again. That afternoon, as I sorted through more paperwork, George and Martha shared stories of their own struggles and triumphs, reminding me that resilience was a family trait. We discussed lawyers, next steps, and strategies, turning their kitchen into a war room of sorts. As evening fell, George cooked dinner, a simple stew that filled the house with a comforting aroma. We ate together, talking about everything but the situation at hand, giving me a much-needed break from the stress. The battle was far from over, but for the first time since this whole nightmare began, I felt like I wasn't facing it alone. With George and Martha's support, I had a fighting chance. And as I drifted off to sleep, I clung to that thought like a lifeline. The morning of the divorce proceedings, I walked into the lawyer's office with a steely resolve. The office was cold and sterile, the kind of place where futures were dismantled and rearranged. Jack entered, his face an emotionless mask. He wasn't alone. Lana, his mistress, was glued to his side. Her confidence seemed forced, a thin veneer over her uncertainty. I could feel their surprise as they saw me sitting there, calm and composed. Before Jack could even find his words, I cut to the chase. I'm pregnant, Jack. Jack's eyes widened, his composure slipping. What? Pregnant? Lana's face twisted from confidence to confusion and then to rage. You said you hadn't touched her in months, you lying jerk. I ignored her outburst and continued. I'm asking for alimony, Jack. $800 a month for the next 21 years for our child. The lawyer, Mr. Harris, a middle-aged man with a stern face, nodded in approval. Given the circumstances, Mrs. Smith's request is perfectly reasonable. Jack looked like he had been punched. This is insane. You can't just bring this on me and expect me to pay up. I met his gaze squarely. I can, and I am. You made your bed, now lie in it. You owe this to our child, if not to me, I asserted. Lana was fuming, her voice shrill with anger. Jack, you can't do this. She's clearly trying to trap you. Jack, flustered and overwhelmed, ran a hand through his hair. I need time to think. Mr. Harris interjected. Mr. Smith, the law is clear. You have a financial responsibility to your child. Jack slumped into the chair defeatedly. Fine, he muttered. I'll pay the alimony. As they left, Lana was hissing into Jack's ear, her facade of poise completely shattered. I remained seated, feeling a mixture of triumph and sadness. This wasn't just about the money, it was about standing up for myself and my future child. In the following weeks, I worked with Mr. Harris to iron out the details. He was impressed with my resolve, often remarking on my newfound toughness. You're not the same woman who walked into my office a month ago, he said during one of our meetings. I smiled, feeling a sense of empowerment. I guess I'm not. I have someone else to think about now. As I left his office after signing the final papers, I felt a sense of closure. The battle was tough, but I had come out stronger. I was ready to face whatever came next, not just for me, but for my child as well. After the tumultuous divorce proceedings, I found an unexpected source of strength in Jack's parents, George and Martha. We sat in their cozy living room, plotting our next move. We need to show that scoundrel he can't just trample over our family, George said, his voice tinged with anger. Martha added, we've got to be smart about this. We can't just barge in there and make a scene. I agree, but what can we do? He's made his bed with Lana, I said. George stopped pacing and turned to me. What if we visit them regularly, make our presence felt, remind Jack of the family he's turning his back on? Martha's eyes lit up. Yes, and it'll drive that little homewrecker up the wall. She won't like us being around, reminding her of what she's done. Their cunning plan made me smile. You think it'll work? Make her uncomfortable? George grinned. Oh, I'm sure it will. We'll be the most annoying, ever-present in-laws she won't know what hit her. Martha clapped her hands together. We'll start tomorrow, a nice long unannounced visit. The next day, we executed our plan. George rang the doorbell of what used to be my home. A big smile plastered on his face as Jack opened the door. Son, we thought we'd drop by, spend some quality time together, George boomed, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. Lana appeared behind Jack, her smile forced. Oh, what a surprise! And what is she doing here? Martha breezed past her, adding, she's with us. We just couldn't stay away, it's been too long. We spent hours there, talking loudly, laughing, and reminiscing about old times, pointedly ignoring Lana's growing discomfort. Every time she tried to interject or change the subject, George or Martha skillfully steered the conversation back. As we left, Lana's frustration was evident. She was fuming, barely managing a fake smile. In the car, Martha chuckled. Did you see her face? She was about to explode. George was laughing too. We're just getting started. That girl has no idea what she's in for. I sat in the back seat, a sense of satisfaction washing over me. It was a small, petty victory, but after everything that had happened, it felt good to take some control back, to push back against the injustice of it all. With George and Martha by my side, I felt stronger, ready to face whatever came next. A few weeks after our in-law intervention strategy began, I received unexpected news from Martha during one of our coffee chats. Mila, you won't believe it. Jack's put the house up for sale, she said, her voice a mix of shock and satisfaction. I almost choked on my coffee. What? Why would he do that? Martha shrugged. Seems like Lana can't stand us being around, she's pushing him to move. I pondered the situation, an idea slowly forming in my mind. Martha, what if I bought the house back? George, who had been quietly reading the newspaper, looked up. Buy it back? You think that's a good idea? I nodded. Yes, but at a lower price. Jack's desperate and I have the money from the settlement. It's perfect. Martha smiled slightly. That would be quite the turn of events. Imagine Ilana's face if she knew. I contacted a realtor friend, explaining the situation and my plan. She agreed to help, ensuring my identity remained hidden during the negotiations. A week later, I sat with my realtor friend, discussing our strategy. Jack's asking for a high price, but we know he's desperate. Let's lowball him, my realtor suggested. I'll start the negotiations. He won't know it's you until the deal is sealed, she assured. The negotiations went back and forth for days. Finally, Jack caved, accepting a much lower offer than his initial asking price. My realtor friend called me with the news. We got it, May, he accepted the offer, she said, barely containing her excitement. I couldn't help but laugh. I can't believe it, I'm buying my house back. The day we closed the deal, I met my realtor at the office. You're now the proud owner of your old house, she said, handing me the keys. The day I reclaimed my house was a day of triumph. I stood outside the familiar front door, the weight of the keys in my hand, symbolizing so much more than mere ownership. My heart pounded with a mix of excitement and apprehension, as I prepared to face Jack and Lana one last time, in what was once our shared home. Unlocking the door, I stepped inside. The sight of Jack and Lana surrounded by boxes in the midst of packing brought a sense of surreal finality. They both looked up, shock and disbelief etched on their faces. What the hell, May? How did you get in here? Jack's voice was a mixture of anger and confusion. I couldn't help but smirk. Oh, didn't you hear? I'm the new owner. Surprise. Lana's face turned a shade of red, her eyes wide in shock. This has to be some kind of sick joke. Crossing my arms, I leaned against the doorframe. No joke, Lana. I bought the house. It's mine now, and you two are trespassing. Jack's face contorted with anger. This is low, even for you, Mila. You think you can just waltz back in here and take over? I straightened up, my voice firm and unwavering. Yes, Jack. That's exactly what I'm doing. You wanted me out, and now I'm back. My house, my rules. Time for you to leave. Lana, fuming, spat out. You can't do this. We have rights. I walked into the living room, standing my ground. The only right you have right now is to walk out of my house. I suggest you do it quickly. Jack, realizing the futility of arguing, began to gather his belongings. Lana followed suit, her movements jerky with frustration. As they left, Lana hissed at me. You haven't won anything, MAA. Watching them leave, I felt a surge of empowerment. This house, which had witnessed the rise and fall of my marriage, was now a symbol of my resilience. It was a battleground, where I had emerged victorious. After the door closed behind them, I walked through the empty rooms, each space echoing with memories, both good and bad. But now, it was time to make new ones. I envisioned the house filled with laughter and love once more, a sanctuary for me and my future child. Sitting down in the quiet living room, I allowed myself a moment to take it all in. I had come full circle, but this time, I was in control. A victor reclaiming her kingdom. The journey had been fraught with pain and betrayal, but it had led me to this moment of triumph. My house, my rules, my life. I was ready to start anew, stronger and more determined than ever. One afternoon, as I was arranging the nursery for my soon-to-arrive baby, there was a knock on the door. I opened it to find George and Martha beaming with smiles. Ma, dear, how are you holding up? Martha asked as she stepped inside, her eyes taking in the changes I'd made. I'm doing well, Martha, getting ready for the baby, I replied, leading them into the living room. George, carrying a bag of baby clothes, chuckled. This little one is going to be spoiled rotten by us, you know that, right? He said. I laughed, the sound bright and genuine. I wouldn't have it any other way. As we sat chatting and laughing, another knock came at the door. This time, it was Jack. He looked different, worn out, a little defeated. Can we talk, Ma? Jack's voice was low, lacking its usual confidence. I hesitated but nodded, stepping outside to talk to him privately. I messed up, Mila, Jack started, not meeting my eyes. Lana left me. I'm broke, and I was hoping. I cut him off, my voice steady. Hoping for what, Jack? For me to take you back after everything? Jack's face crumpled. I know I don't deserve it, but I have nowhere else to go. I looked at him. The man I once loved, now just a stranger filled with regrets. Jack, I've moved on. I'm starting a new life for me and my baby. You need to do the same. He nodded slowly, the reality of the situation sinking in. I understand. I'm sorry, MAA. As he walked away, I felt a closure I didn't know I needed. Turning back to the house, I saw George and Martha watching through the window, their expressions a mix of concern and support. He won't bother you again, will he? George asked as I walked back in. I shook my head. No, he won't. I made it clear. Martha hugged me. You're so strong, Mila. We're so proud of you. Sitting back down, surrounded by the people who had become my true family, I felt a sense of peace. The journey had been long and fraught with pain, but it had led me here, to a place of strength and new beginnings. The future was uncertain, but it was mine to shape, and I looked forward to every moment of it.
My name is Karen. 4 years ago, I stepped into a life I thought was perfect. Married at 27 to Michael, a man who promised to carry me in his arms before we even walked down the aisle, I felt like the luckiest woman alive. He wasn't just my husband, he was my best friend, my confidant. We shared everything, from morning coffees to late-night dreams about our future. Michael always had a way of making me feel special. I remember our first anniversary. He recreated our first date, down to the same table at the quaint Italian restaurant where we first realized we were meant for each other. It wasn't just about the grand gestures, it was the little things. The way he'd brush the hair from my face, the soft kisses he'd plant on my forehead when he thought I was asleep. Our life together was bliss, filled with laughter and love. We lived in a beautiful house, spacious and filled with light. It was our haven, a place where we planned to raise a family. My job as a fitness trainer at a popular gym brought me joy and fulfillment, and Michael was thriving in his career. We were doing well financially, and we often talked about starting a family, about having kids running around the house, filling it with even more laughter and joy. Evelyn, Michael's mother, was a strong presence in our lives. From the first time I met her, she showered me with compliments. "You're absolutely stunning, Karen, just like a Hollywood actress from the 50s, she'd said, her eyes sparkling with genuine fondness. She often spoke about how beautiful our children would be, combining my looks with Michael's charm. Her approval meant the world to me. But then, one ordinary evening, everything changed. I was driving home from the gym, my mind buzzing with plans for the weekend. Michael and I had planned a small getaway, just the two of us, a chance to reconnect and talk more about our future, about finally starting that family we'd always wanted. As I approached the intersection, a song we both loved started playing on the radio. I smiled, turning up the volume, lost in the moment. That's when it happened. Out of nowhere, a car ran the red light and slammed into my side. The impact was deafening, a cacophony of crunching metal and shattering glass. My head whipped to the side, and pain erupted across my face and body. The world spun wildly, a blur of lights and sounds, and then, as quickly as it had all started, everything plunged into silence and darkness. Waking up in the hospital was like emerging into a world I no longer recognized. My body was a patchwork of aches and bandages. The first few days were a blur of doctors, painkillers, and Michael's face, etched with worry. Michael sat beside me, holding my hand. His voice was gentle, but his eyes couldn't hide his concern. "Hey, how are you feeling?" he asked. I tried to smile, but it hurt. "Like I've been hit by a truck," I joked weakly. He offered a strained smile, but said nothing. The nurses were kind, always checking in, offering comforting words. But their eyes, full of pity, told a story they didn't voice. I knew I was badly hurt, but the extent of it was hidden beneath the bandages that wrapped my face. As days turned into a week, Michael's visits grew shorter, his excuses more frequent. "Work's crazy right now," he'd say, or "Mom needs my help with something." I understood, or at least I tried to, but the silence and the solitude in the hospital room were suffocating. The day came to remove the bandages. I sat in front of a mirror, my heart racing. The nurse, a kind woman named Lisa, offered me an encouraging smile. "Ready?" she asked. I nodded, not trusting my voice. Slowly, she unwrapped the bandages, revealing my reflection bit by bit. The face staring back at me was a stranger's, scarred, distorted, a stark contrast to the woman I used to be. I couldn't hold back the tears. Lisa put a comforting hand on my shoulder. "It's still early days. Healing takes time," she said softly. I barely heard her. My thoughts were consumed by fear. What would Michael think? What would everyone think? I was no longer the woman he married. Michael's next visit was the hardest. He walked in, his usual confident stride faltering as he saw my face. "Hey," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I looked away, unable to meet his eyes. "It's bad, isn't it?" I asked, my voice trembling. Michael paused, struggling to find the right words. It's not that bad. You're still you." But the way he said it, the way he couldn't quite look at me, spoke volumes. I lay there, feeling a chasm growing between us. The man who had promised to carry me through life seemed lost, unsure of how to bridge the gap that my scars had created. He came out of the hospital room, and I overheard him on the phone. His words, meant to be private, cut through me like a knife. "I don't know, Mom. She became ugly. It's hard to look at her," he said, and there was something like disgust in his voice. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, tears streaming down my face. I felt betrayed, not by his words, but by the realization that his love had conditions I was no longer able to meet. I mourned for my lost beauty, for the love I thought was unconditional, and for the future that now seemed like a distant dream. Returning home was supposed to be a relief, a step towards normalcy. But as I crossed the threshold of the house that once symbolized love and warmth, I felt sick because of the suffocating atmosphere of hostility, hidden hints, and disgust. The first few days, Michael was quiet, almost tiptoeing around me. Our conversations were strained, filled with awkward silences. I tried to bridge the gap, to reach out to him, but it felt like talking to a wall. One evening, as I sat on the couch trying to read, Michael walked in. He glanced at me, then quickly looked away. "How was your day?" I asked, hoping to start some kind of conversation. He shrugged, keeping his eyes fixed on the TV. "It was okay. Busy." I nodded, feeling a knot in my stomach. I was thinking, maybe this weekend we could go out, just to get some fresh air. Michael hesitated, then said, "I don't think it's a good idea. Maybe you should rest more." His words stung. It wasn't about resting. It was about not wanting to be seen with me. I turned my attention back to my book, but the words blurred through my tears. It wasn't just Michael. Evelyn's visits were even more difficult. She would come in, her face twisted in a poorly disguised grimace as she looked at me. Her words were polite, but her eyes were cold. One day, she sat across from me, her gaze wandering everywhere but my face. "It's such a shame what happened," she said, a tinge of something like disgust in her voice. I clenched my fists, trying to maintain my composure. "Yes, it is," I replied, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. Evelyn sighed, tapping her fingers on the table. "Well, we must all move on, right? Life doesn't stop." Her words, meant to be comforting, felt more like an attempt to avoid a difficult conversation. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. Then came the night that broke me. I woke up to the sound of Michael's voice. He was on the phone, his words slurred. Curiosity got the better of me, and I crept closer to the door. "I can't do this anymore, Mom. She's a different person, a monster. I don't even recognize her," he slurred, his voice heavy with drink. I stood there, frozen, as his words echoed in my head. I was the same person, wasn't I? But to him, I was a stranger, a monster, someone he no longer loved or desired. I returned to bed, but sleep eluded me. The darkness of the room felt suffocating, a physical embodiment of the loneliness that had enveloped my life. Lying there, I realized that the home I once cherished no longer existed. It was just a house now, a place where I lived but no longer belonged. The changes in our home were like a slow, creeping fog, gradually obscuring the warmth and love that once filled it. Michael began coming home late, the smell of alcohol clinging to him like a second skin. His eyes, once so full of affection, now often glinted with irritation and something darker. One night, he staggered in, his steps unsteady. I sat up, concerned. "Michael, you're home late. Is everything okay?" He sneered, his words slurred. "Oh, now you care? You spend all day hiding in this house, and now you pretend to care about me?" I flinched, stung by his words. "Michael, you're drunk. Let's talk about this in the morning." He laughed bitterly, a sound that sent shivers down my spine. "What's there to talk about? Look at you. Look at us." I retreated to our room, tears stinging my eyes. The next day, I called Evelyn, hoping for some understanding, some support. "He's drinking a lot, coming home late, and he's mean," I told her, my voice breaking. Evelyn's response was curt, dismissive. "It's normal, dear. Men do these things. He's just stressed, that's all." Her words were like a cold splash of water. I realized then that I was alone in this, that my pain and my struggles were mine to bear. The worst night came without warning. I woke up to bright flashes of light. Blinking away sleep, I saw Michael standing over me with his phone, taking pictures. His face was twisted in a drunken smirk. "What are you doing?" I asked, confusion and fear mingling in my voice. He laughed, a cruel, harsh sound. "I'm sending your photos to Hollywood. Maybe you can star in horror films now. No makeup needed." His words cut through me like a knife. I lay there, frozen, as he continued to snap pictures. Each click of the camera shudder a punctuation mark to my humiliation. After he left, I turned my face into the pillow, my body racked with sobs. The tears came in torrents, for the man I had lost, for the love that had turned to cruelty, and for the life that seemed to be slipping through my fingers. Humiliated by Michael's cruel remarks and feeling increasingly alienated, I started wearing a mask at home. It was a plain, white mask, hiding the scars that had become the focus of my existence. It was a small shield against the pain, a barrier between me and the world that had turned so cold. As I adjusted the mask one morning, looking at the blank face staring back at me in the mirror, my phone rang, cutting through the silence of the room. An unknown number flashed on the screen, and with a hesitant hand, I answered. "Hello, is this Mrs. Johnson?" The voice was unfamiliar, cautious yet sincere. "Yes, it's me. Who's this?" I replied, curiosity piqued. "My name is John. I was the father of the young man in your accident," he said, his voice laced with regret. A mix of emotions washed over me. "Oh, I see," I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. John paused before continuing. "I can't express how sorry I am for what happened. My son was troubled, and what he did, it was unforgivable. I want to do something to help, to make amends." His words, unexpected and heavy with sorrow, left me momentarily speechless. "How can you help?" I asked, skepticism mingling with a faint spark of hope. "I'd like to meet and discuss it in person. Would that be okay?" John's request was earnest, almost pleading. After a moment of hesitation, I agreed to meet him. Sitting across from John in a cafe, his eyes filled with remorse, I listened as he spoke. "Karen, I want to offer financial support for any surgeries or treatments that might help you," he said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. The offer was both overwhelming and tempting. I need to think about it," I replied, my mind racing with possibilities. I kept the meeting and the offer a secret from Michael and Evelyn. Their reactions, I feared, would only add to my confusion and pain. After days of internal debate, I decided to accept John's offer. I arranged consultations with plastic surgeons, discussing what could be done to help heal my scars. To Michael, I mentioned only that I was going for routine medical treatments. He didn't ask for details, and I didn't volunteer any, his indifference a stark contrast to the storm of emotions raging inside me. On the day of the surgery, as I lay on the operating table, the mask was removed, and for a moment I faced my scars unflinchingly. Closing my eyes, I allowed myself to dream, to hope for a future where the woman in the mirror would be someone I recognized, someone whole. Weeks turned into months since the surgery, and with each passing day, my face healed, slowly returning to what it once was. But I kept this transformation hidden under my mask, a secret held close to my chest. Michael, lost in his own world, didn't seem to notice or care. The day I returned home from my final follow-up appointment, the mask firmly in place, I braced myself. Michael and Evelyn were there, their expressions clouded with disdain as I walked in. The air was thick with unspoken contempt, a familiar yet unwelcome presence in what used to be our home. Michael's eyes met mine briefly before he looked away, his lips curling into a sneer. "Look at you, hiding behind that mask. Can't even face the world," he muttered. I remained silent, the mask my armor against his words. Without warning, he thrust a stack of papers towards me. They fluttered to the ground, divorce papers, a stark symbol of our failed marriage. "I'm done with this farce," he spat out. "Sign these and let's end it." I felt a cold calm settle over me. Picking up the papers, I signed them without a word, my pen steady, my resolve firmer than ever. Evelyn, standing nearby, scoffed. Good riddance. We don't need an ugly reminder of your failure in our lives. Her words, meant to wound, barely grazed me. I had grown beyond their reach. With a small smile playing on my lips, I reached up and removed my mask, revealing my face, almost as it was before the accident. The shock on Michael's and Evelyn's faces was a picture I'd remember forever. Michael's eyes widened, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Evelyn's hand flew to her mouth, her earlier poise crumbling. But how? Michael stammered, taking a step towards me. I looked at him, my smile growing. You were too busy wallowing in your own misery to notice me, to see the person you vowed to love in sickness and in health. Michael's face crumbled, his earlier bravado fading. Please, let's start over. We can forget all this happened. I laughed, not out of joy, but because of the absurdity of his words. Forget? No, Michael. I won't forget how you treated me, how you made me feel. I'm leaving, but not because you or your mother want me to. I'm leaving for me. I gathered my bag, my signed divorce papers in hand, and walked past them, out of the house that was no longer a home. Their shocked faces were the last image I took with me, a reminder of how far I had come and the new life that awaited me. Starting over wasn't easy, but it was necessary. I moved into a small apartment, a space that was mine alone. It was here, among unpacked boxes and bare walls, that I began to rebuild my life. Returning to work at the fitness center was a big step. The familiar smell of the gym, the sound of weights clinking. It was comforting. My colleagues welcomed me back with open arms, their smiles genuine and warm. Hey, Karen, you're back. We missed you around here, said Lisa, one of the trainers. I smiled, feeling a sense of belonging. It's good to be back. I've missed this place. As I resumed training sessions, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. With each class I taught, I grew stronger, not just physically, but emotionally too. I was finding myself again, rediscovering the woman who loved her job, who took pride in her strength. One day, after a particularly grueling session, I sat down on a bench, catching my breath. That's when John walked in. I hadn't seen him since our meeting at the cafe months ago. Hello, he said, a tentative smile on his face. I was in the neighborhood and thought I'd stop by. How are you? I stood up, surprised but pleased to see him. I'm doing well, thank you. It's good to see you, John. We talked for a while, about mundane things at first, the weather, the gym. Then the conversation shifted to more personal topics. I never got the chance to thank you properly, I said, my voice sincere. Your help. It changed everything for me. John's smile was warm. I'm just glad I could do something to make amends. You've come a long way. He hesitated for a moment before continuing. I was wondering if maybe you'd like to grab a coffee sometime? No pressure, just as friends. The invitation caught me off guard, but it was a pleasant surprise. I'd like that, I replied, a genuine smile spreading across my face. As I watched him leave the gym, I felt a flutter of excitement, a feeling I hadn't experienced in a long time. It was the beginning of something new, a chance to explore life from a fresh perspective. That night, as I lay in bed in my new apartment, I thought about the twists and turns my life had taken. There was still pain and healing ahead, but there was also hope. Hope for a future that was mine to shape. The dawn of a new day was breaking, and I was ready to meet it head on. The journey of life, I've come to realize, is never a straight path. It twists and turns, bringing challenges and surprises along the way. Since my divorce, I've been rediscovering who I am, but not without unexpected obstacles. Michael, unable to accept the end of our marriage, began reaching out, trying to rekindle what we once had. His persistence, a stark contrast to his earlier indifference, forced me to seek legal means to ensure my peace. It was a difficult decision, but necessary for my well-being. The day I stood in court, asking for a restraining order, I felt a mix of sadness and determination. Sadness for what our relationship had become, and determination to protect my newfound independence. Meanwhile, my relationship with John was blossoming into something beautiful and profound. He was a constant source of support and understanding. On one of our dates, as we walked along a riverbank under the stars, he turned to me and said something that stayed with me. "You know, you were always beautiful, even with your scars. It's just that not everyone can look past the surface. Not everyone can see into the soul." I looked at him, touched by his words. "Thank you, John. That means more to me than you can imagine." He smiled, his eyes reflecting the starlight. "It's the truth, and I'm grateful for every part of you." That night, as I lay in bed, reflecting on everything that had happened, I felt a deep sense of contentment. My journey had been fraught with pain and heartache, but it had also led me to a place of self-acceptance and love. I realized then that the most profound form of love isn't about how we look or what we have. It's about being loved for our soul, for the essence of who we are. John saw me for me, scars and all, and cherished what he saw. Life had come full circle, but in a way I hadn't anticipated. I had lost a life I thought was perfect, only to find a deeper, more meaningful existence. I had learned to love myself and found someone who loved me for the person I had become. As I drifted off to sleep, I felt a sense of gratitude. Gratitude for the lessons learned, for the strength gained, and for the love that had found its way into my life. I had emerged from the shadows of my past, stepping into a future bright with promise and hope.
Life was as predictable as a routine dental checkup until today. My name's Jenny, your average tooth fairy who trades in molars for money, except that I work with state-of-the-art equipment in a swanky downtown clinic. My husband, Mark, is pretty much the academic type, graying at the temples and all. He lectured in the halls I once roamed as a student, though we never swapped anything more than a hello back then. It was only after my cap and gown were tucked away that we started sharing dinners, and before you knew it, vows. You could say we lived a standard, married with no kids, just a couple of lazy goldfish life. Until today. Exhausted, slipping out of my work shoes, I saw them, divorce papers, as stark and chilling as an extracted wisdom tooth, lying beside a note on a coffee table that had seen better days, his handwriting, no doubt. Grimacing, I picked up the note. His words punched me in the gut harder than any root canal ever would. Jenny, I'm tired. Tired of the humdrum, of papers, of people. I need silence, not the kind we got on Sunday mornings, but the deep kind that you only find away from civilization. Consider this my path to becoming a nobody, to finding some darn peace. Mark. My hands trembled, the note nearly crumpling in my grip. No dramatic outburst, shock does that to you. I uncapped one of the pens that was always scattered around and scribbled on the back of some grocery receipt, the only paper in immediate reach, then dialed Mark, heart drumming a harsh beat against my ribs. The line clicked, and after what seemed like a year, his familiar, now distant voice answered. Jenny? Mark. What's this about becoming a nobody, huh? You dumping our years together like last week's trash? Jenny, you're not getting it. I can't. I don't want to. It's not you. It's... Cut the crap, Mark. You leave a note? Papers? Just like that? My voice rose as I gripped the phone like it was a lifeline. Where are you? There was a pause, a silence that spoke volumes. Somewhere you can't find me. Somewhere I can be alone. Alone? And what am I supposed to do, huh? Just sit tight and smile while you play hermit? Jenny, please. No, you listen. You can't just decide you're bored, Anne. Bored isn't the word, Jenny. I need something else, something different. What? Silence? You want silence, buy earplugs. But you don't just get to check out. I spat the words out as if they were sour. Jenny, please try to understand. Oh, I understand, all right. Understood loud and clear, Professor. You've made your point. Enjoy your bloody peace then. The line went dead with a finality that echoed in the now too quiet room. The note lay there, staring up at me with its life-altering news, and I was left to figure out if I was to press on with the painful extraction of Mark from my life or root around in the mess for a sliver of hope. It seemed I had more than just teeth to pull. The clinic reeked of strong antiseptic. Where it used to put me at ease, now, it just stirred the pot of my mind, brimming with gossip. Mark, my ex, gone puff, just like that. And the fact that everyone wouldn't shut up about it was getting under my skin. The phone was buzzing again. It never eased up. I knew without looking it was more of the same, nosy folks prying for details. Sam's Dental, how may I help you? I answered, using the clinic's name to avoid personal questions. Hey, it's Lizzie from Math Department. We heard about Mark. You holding up okay? I sighed. Yeah, Lizzie, I'm doing my job. Anything else? I mean, it's just weird, right? Mark's such an urban guy. She pried, digging for dirt. It's his choice, I snapped, a bit more sharply than intended. Sorry, it's just been a rough day. I could almost hear her shrug through the phone. Sure, just checking in. You know how it is here, we're all a bit nosy. The clinic was quieter than usual. I could almost hear the whispers bleeding through the walls. Patients eyed me with a mix of pity and morbid curiosity as I walked through the hall. I needed a break from the staring and the rumors. I found myself in the staff room with Rosa, the receptionist, who was always blunt as a spoon. She was digging through her locker, the metal door screeching like nails on a chalkboard. So, he left you the papers then disappeared, huh? Rosa didn't mince her words. That's about the size of it, I muttered, pouring myself a coffee. She leaned against the lockers, arching an eyebrow. You sign M? Yeah. Savage. Rosa shook her head. Man's got style, give him that. I couldn't help but laugh, leave it to Rosa to call a disappearing act stylish. Back in my office, the nice and tidy one with diplomas on the wall, the phone rang again. It was the one face I didn't mind showing up in my caller ID, Angela, the closest thing I'd had to a sister since forever. Girl, how you just gonna let him punk you like that? No hello, no how are you, just Angela in all her glory. He didn't punk me, Ange. I signed the papers, that was my choice. And you just gonna roll over and play dead? There's nothing to fight for. I'm done and dusted with him. There was a pause. I knew Angela's wheels were turning. Fine, she said. But this isn't gonna fly. We're going out tonight. You need to blow off some steam, or you'll go nuts. I wanted to argue, but she wasn't wrong. Besides, it beat listening to the whispers and rumors that looped like a bad soundtrack in my mind. The hours ticked by, filled with teeth cleaning and dodging personal questions. By the time my last patient left, I was ready to peel out of there like a bat out of hell. Angela was waiting for me at the local dive, the kind of place where the beer was cold, and no one gave two hoots about your personal drama. I walked in and spotted her straight away, waving enthusiastically. What's kicking, chicken? She greeted me, sliding over a glass of something strong. Hey, Ange. Just the usual circus. I gulped down the drink, welcoming the burn. We talked, or rather, she talked, and I tried to forget. It worked, mostly. The clink of glasses and Angela's hearty laughter were a good combo. It was late when we said our goodbyes, just outside the bar. The night was dark, the wind was cold, and once inside my car, I realized something. I felt lighter. Like dropping off a heavy suitcase I'd been lugging around. The years had rolled by like series of silent movie frames. That old bitterness about Mark, it was more or less a faint echo these days. I mean, life had to move on, right? I shifted gears somewhere along the line, and now, well, now things were steady. You could say I was living the quiet life, except for the occasional siren wail, thanks to my new husband, Tom, the cop. Tom was good people. A chuckle in a uniform, you might say. He had this knack, you know, for turning a crappy day around with just a smirk and a joke that was so bad it circled back to being good. Then there was Joey, our little typhoon in toddler form. 3 years old and already the boss of the household. If joy came in human form, it was him, no contest. One pretty normal Tuesday, I was in the kitchen, fighting with the wrapper of a macaroni box. That's when Tom ambled in, his uniform looking like it had seen better days. He planted a kiss on my cheek, still sparking a little zing even after all these years, and ruffled Joey's hair. "Hey, bud, how was your day with Mom?" he asked Joey, who was smashing a toy truck into the linoleum. Joey's answer was a happy shriek and more enthusiastic truck smashing. "I'm starting to think he's going to follow in your footsteps," I said, finally getting the box open and emptying it into the simmering water. Tom's beeper suddenly blared, ruining the moment. He checked it and grimaced. "Looks like the station needs me. Some brawl at the bar downtown." "Geez, Tom. Stay safe, will you?" "Always," he said, standing up, but with Joey still clinging to him. He handed our son back to me. "Gotta run. I'll try not to wake you too when I come back." After he left, it was just Joey and me and the hum of the refrigerator. Joey babbled something about Dada, and I couldn't help but feel a twang in my chest. Sure, I had Tom and Joey, a solid job, a roof over my head. But sometimes, when Tom's cruiser pulled out of the driveway, or when Joey's laughter filled a room, I'd remember I once had a different life, a different partner in the dance. "Come on, champ," I told Joey. "Let's tackle that mountain of blocks like we're the king and queen of the castle." And as I built flimsy towers for Joey to knock over, laughing all the while, I realized I'd turned over more than just a new leaf. I'd started a whole new chapter. And you know what? It looked pretty damn good from where I was sitting. As the flat screen on the wall spat out images with quiet contempt, there was Mark, my ex, hunched over on a patch of green. The grass was probably crumpled under him, matching his wrinkled linen shirt. I hadn't seen him in years, not since he traded our life for silence and dirt paths. Those journalists were eyeing him like he was a prize pig at the fair, each waiting for their turn. Mark fiddled with strands of his wild beard as he leaned into the microphone. His voice, still with that calm know-it-all tone, itched in my ears. "Yeah, that's right," he was saying. "I had to leave because of her. She's got this heart, steeled over, you know? Cold. And cheating? She was a regular at that game. Took my piece, she did. That's why you find me here, away from all that mess." The air in the dental clinic was colder than usual, or maybe it was just my mood darkening everything around me since that darned news report aired. I slammed my locker shut, trying to shove away the clutter of whispers and side glances that had infested the office like bad breath. It wasn't just the sterile smell of mint and disinfectant lingering, it was the stench of gossip. Thanks to my ex, Mark, I was the new plaque everyone wanted to scrape off. Hey, you done early? Gina, one of the hygienists, leaned against the door frame, balancing a stack of patient folders. Her tone was casual, but her eyes were skirting around mine, wary. Too wary. Yeah, I grunted, collecting my stuff. Need to clear my head. This place is looking kinda stuffy. She snorted, a crude sound that was music to my irritated ears. Looks the same to me. Though, you could cut the tension with dental floss. I offered a half smile, but didn't meet her eyes. Maybe some people got cavities in their personalities, I replied, voice tight. As I walked out, I couldn't shake off the prying eyes. Reaching my car, I spotted Tom waiting for me, arms crossed, leant on the hood. His usual sunny exterior was clouded over. How's it going, Jenny? He asked as I approached, trying to light up the dimming day. Like a root canal gone wrong, I replied, my keys jingled with a shake of my hand. Tom pushed himself off the car. You know what I think? Screw him. He's talking crap. That's one word for it, I said, opening the car door. Tom detoured it, his stance stubborn. We shouldn't let this nonsense get between us. You've got me, Joey, and Angela. It's their problem if they believe that liar. The sincerity in his voice was a soothing balm, but I was too riled up to take it in fully. Sure, but try telling that to the Hyena Club in there. He grabbed my hand, his grip firm. Listen, let's grab Joey, hit the pizza place, and just chill. All right? I took a breath, absorbing the offer. You always know how to patch things up, cop hubby, I said with a tired smile. And don't forget it. He flashed a grin, the kind that could make a dentist proud. But before we could continue, a call cut through our bubble. Mommy. Joey came sprinting across the parking lot, his babysitter trailing behind. The little guy wrapped around my legs, a toddler tornado. Hey champ, I said, lifting him up. You ready for some pizza? Pizza, pizza, Joey chanted, any worry about the day's drama lost in his innocent cheer. I glanced back at the clinic once Joey and Tom were settled in the car, a cold laugh escaping me. To hell with them. Let's go have some real family time. Tom revved the engine, a mischievous spark lighting his eyes. No looking back, babe. That's the rule. Got it, boss? I said, and as we drove off, Joey's giggles, the only sound I cared about, I felt the heaviness shed bit by bit. It was just another crappy chapter in the novel of life, one that I'd darn well write myself. No ex-husband was going to taint my reflection, not anymore. I was still reeling from another day's work when she cornered me. Jasmine, the new intern, was kind of edgy since the day she stumbled in, but today, she was all jittery. So there I was, peeling off my gloves, and she comes up real close, smelling like antiseptic and fear. Doc, I gotta talk to you, Jasmine said, her voice as shaky as a beaten-up washing machine. What's up? I was already thinking about the pile of paperwork waiting to claw at my evening. It's about Mark. I heard the other nurses saying you were married to that guy. Her eyes darted around the room as if afraid the walls would grow ears. Yeah, what about him? I tossed the gloves and reached for my coffee, gone cold hours ago. I was a student when he was teaching. He wasn't just giving lectures, if you know what I mean. Her voice took a dive, like someone had yanked the volume down. He did stuff. Bad stuff. I felt something raw and bitter twist in my gut. Stuff? I asked, hoping for some vague rumor I could dismiss. He was handsy, you know, with me. And with others. We were just a bunch of scared kids, and he liked that power. Jasmine spat the words out like they were poison. My grip on the mug tightened. Why are you telling me this now? Because I saw him on TV, acting all holy and repentant. I couldn't stomach it. I threatened to expose him, and then he vanished. That coward, I hissed. The mug in my hand cracked, coffee seeping through the spiderweb crevices to drip onto the floor. He told everyone he left 'cause of you and some grand spiritual quest. But that's bull. He fled 'cause I had proof of what he did. The texts, the creepy late-night calls. That's a big claim, Jasmine, I managed to say, my throat dry as sawdust. You got any of that proof on you? Yep, she said, a grim satisfaction in her tone. She hauled out her phone, a cheap thing with a cracked screen, and flicked through messages until she shoved it under my nose. There it was, in black and white. A whole sordid history laid out in texts and emails. I read, every word a punch in the gut. When I was done, I looked up. I'm sorry, for what it's worth. Thank you for coming forward. We gonna do something about it? She asked, tough as nails now. Absolutely, I said, feeling a flame of anger kindling inside me. And as we plotted revenge on the man I once called a husband, the man who had fooled us all, I felt a grim kind of satisfaction. This was going to be messy, but hell, it was about time some dirt got cleaned up around here. I stood there in the clearing, staring at the man I once called my husband. There he was, Professor Mark, looking every bit the wilderness prophet with a graying beard and a flock of adoring followers. His eyes flashed over me, a brief flash of recognition, before his face settled into that infuriating calm. Jenny? What the hell are you doing here? His voice had that familiar sharp edge. Just wanted a chat, Mark. A cozy catch-up between exes. Never thought I'd find you playing guru, I said, squinting at the half-naked followers prancing around. He crossed his arms, a smirk playing on his lips. To what do I owe the pleasure? I cut to the chase. That trash talk on TV, really, Mark? Cruel and unfaithful. You sure have a way with fiction. He shrugged, the same old nonchalant shrug that drove me up the wall. Needed a story, didn't I? Playing the victim pays the bills. I couldn't help but laugh, bitter and sharp. And here I thought you ran off to find inner peace. His audience looked on, starving for some drama. He was unfazed. Gotta give the people what they want. Yeah, but at my expense? I felt that familiar anger bubbling. And there's another thing, about Jasmine. His face lost color for a second, but then he barked out a laugh. Jasmine? That kid had nothing on me. His nerve was something else. Without breaking eye contact, I slid out my phone. Actually, she did. He squinted at the screen as I flicked through the messages Jasmine had sent me. Threats, creepy come-ons, the whole 9 yards. Mark tried to grab the phone out of my hands, but then Tom appeared next to me. The message of protection couldn't have been clearer if he was wearing a flashing sign. It made me feel safe and furious all at once that I needed it. Look, everyone, Mark's voice broke through the silence, all smooth and soothing like one of those late-night radio hosts. This is all a big misunderstanding, all right? My ex here, she's got it in for me, that's all this is. I could feel my jaw clench at his words, but I kept my cool. I wasn't about to let him get to me. Not this time. Tom's voice, gravel mixed with thunder, growled next to me. Cut the crap, Mark. We all know what you did. And it's all coming out today. Mark's followers looked from him to me and back again, like they were watching a tennis match. Just then, the wail of the sirens cut through Mark's phony serenity like a chainsaw through butter. His face drained of color, which on him looked almost impressive. Please, Mark was kneeling now, the guru luster gone, replaced by sweaty desperation. You can't do this. Think of my reputation. Tom snorted, stepping closer to Mark so that the kneeling man had to crane his neck just to keep eye contact. Reputation? What about the lies about Jenny? What about all those messages, huh? What about Jasmine's story? You think that doesn't count for nothing? The game's up, buddy. Mark looked up at us, his eyes flicking from my snarl to Tom's stony glare, and then to the uniformed officers coming up behind us. There was a moment, a single moment, where he looked like he might run. But Mark didn't run. He just sat there on his knees, looking up. Looking like he knew that the tides had indeed turned. The followers were mumbling among themselves now, backing away from their fallen idol, their murmurs building like waves before a storm. Then, one of the cops stepped forward, flipping open a notebook. "Are you Professor Mark Thompson?" he asked, his tone neutral. Mark just nodded, his voice squeaking like a rusty hinge. "Yes, sir." The officer glanced at me, then at Tom. "We're going to need to take him in," he said, as if asking for permission. Tom just gave a short nod, and I felt my heart kick up a notch. This was it. Mark shot one last desperate look at his disciples. "I'm being set up," he yelled, hoping for sympathy, salvation. But seeing the truth staring back at him from the scattered glances of the crowd was the nail in the coffin of any sympathy he hoped for. The cop cuffed him with all the flair of someone clocking in for a routine shift. "Mark Thompson, you are under arrest." The clink of the cuffs was like the sweetest music, and that's when I knew, for sure. The tides hadn't just turned, they'd flipped, completely. Tom wrapped his arm around me as we watched Mark being led away. The scene felt almost surreal. I turned to Tom, and his nod told me everything. We were on the same team, and we were strong. I was standing outside and breathing in the fresh air. The phone in my pocket started its own dance, buzzing with incoming calls, no doubt apologies and awkward backtracking. I had no interest in their sorry words. "I told you so" wasn't my style. The door to the clinic swung open, and Jasmine walked out. "Hey, Doc," she said, with a grin that seemed out of place, but right for someone who'd just shrugged off a weight they'd been dragging around. "Is it true? They got him?" "Yep," I said, feeling a sharp sense of satisfaction at her smile. "It's true." "Good. It's about damn time," she said, her voice firm. I could hear some of my own resolve echoed in her tone. Jasmine had courage, coming forward, speaking out. "It's not easy, facing ghosts. He won't be seeing the outside of a jail cell for a long while," Tom said. "Good riddance," she shot back, no hint of sympathy for my ex-husband. I couldn't help smiling at her spunk. "You did good," I said. "Really good." Tom's radio crackled with police chatter, but he ignored it, his attention on today's victory. "You gonna celebrate?" Jasmine asked. Her shift was obviously over, and she was all but bouncing on her heels, ready to let relief transition into something warmer, more joyful. "Mom's got Joey," I answered. "So, yeah, we'll celebrate." Quietly. Jasmine nodded, then left, her steps light. "Let's go home, Tom," I said after a moment. "Let's go be with our son." "Nothing I'd rather do," he agreed, and we turned away, my hand finding his, strength in our combined grip, ready to face whatever came next, together.
I've been a victim for too long, and maybe it was time to reclaim my life. As I stared at my reflection in the mirror, I saw a woman who was tired of being treated like a doormat. "I'm going to figure this out," I whispered, determination rising within me. I had to start planning my next move, and I knew it wouldn't be easy. As I wiped away my tears and gathered my thoughts, a plan began to form in my mind. I wouldn't let Daniel or Helen control my future any longer. I was ready to fight back, to expose the truth, and to reclaim my power. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of a journey that would lead me to self-discovery and empowerment. But first, I had to confront the darkness that surrounded me. In the days following that disastrous birthday party, my mind was a whirlwind of emotions. I was devastated, angry, and above all, determined. Daniel's words echoed in my head. "I don't like you anymore. I'm going to marry my assistant." Those words felt like a dagger to my heart, but they also ignited a fire within me. I realized I had been living in a bubble, blinded by love, and it was time to face the harsh reality. "Are you okay, Maya?" Olivia asked when she came over a few days later. We sat in my living room, the remnants of the party still scattered around. I had tried to clean up, but the decorations felt like painful reminders of what had happened. "I don't know, Liv," I admitted, feeling the weight of my situation. "I keep replaying everything in my mind. I thought we had a good marriage." Olivia looked at me with empathy. "Maya, sometimes the signs are there, but we choose to ignore them. You need to figure out what you really want." "I want my life back," I said, my voice steady. "I want to expose him for who he truly is." "That's the spirit," she encouraged. "But first, we need to gather some evidence. You can't just confront him without a plan." Over the next few days, I started paying closer attention to everything Daniel did. I meticulously noted his strange behavior and late-night phone calls. He had a habit of keeping his phone face down on the table, which was unusual for him. One night, I decided to stay up late and wait for him to come home from work. My heart raced as I heard the familiar sound of his key turning in the lock. "Hey, Maya. You're still awake," he said, stepping into the living room, his expression unreadable. "Yeah, just couldn't sleep," I replied, forcing a smile. "How was your day?" "It was fine," he said, avoiding my gaze as he took off his shoes. I watched him, trying to gauge his mood, but the tension in the air was palpable. "Daniel, can we talk about what happened at the party?" I asked, my heart pounding. "Do we have to?" "I thought we were past that," he replied dismissively, heading towards the kitchen. "Past what?" I pressed. "You slapped me in front of our friends. That's not something we can just forget." He turned to face me, irritation flashing in his eyes. "You know how my mother can be. You should have listened to her." "Listen to her? Daniel, you were the one who humiliated me." "I can't believe you would side with her after that," I said, my voice rising. "Maybe you should take a look at yourself first," he shot back, storming off to the kitchen. I felt my heart sink. This wasn't going anywhere. As the days turned into a week, I continued my investigation. With Olivia and Lisa's help, I discovered that Daniel was seeing his assistant more frequently than I had realized. They would meet for coffee or dinner, and it all began to make sense. I felt a sickening knot in my stomach. One evening, while I was scrolling through social media, I noticed a picture of Daniel and his assistant, Mia, laughing together at a local restaurant. The caption read, "Date night with my favorite person. #blessed." I felt my blood run cold. They were having an affair, and I had been blind to it. "Liv, look at this," I said, showing Olivia the picture. Her eyes widened, and she quickly took a deep breath. "This confirms what we suspected. He's definitely cheating on you," Olivia said, anger flashing in her eyes. "You need to confront him." "I will," I replied, my voice firm. "But first, I need to gather more evidence. I can't let him twist the story around." With renewed determination, I decided to set up a meeting with a lawyer. I wanted to understand my options and prepare for what was to come. After researching local attorneys, I found one with a solid reputation. During the consultation, I explained my situation. "I suspect my husband is cheating on me and planning to take control of my finances," I told the lawyer, my heart racing as I laid everything bare. The lawyer listened carefully. "Gathering evidence will be crucial for any legal action. Document everything you can, including dates, conversations, and any financial discrepancies. This way, you'll be prepared to protect yourself." Feeling empowered, I returned home and started organizing everything I had learned. I collected text messages, emails, and even notes from conversations that had raised red flags. The pieces of the puzzle were coming together, and I could feel the strength building within me. One evening, I was sitting at the kitchen table, going through my notes when Daniel walked in. He looked surprised to see me still awake. "Working late?" he asked, a hint of sarcasm in his voice. "Just going over some things," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. "What things?" he pressed, stepping closer. "Just some personal projects," I said, trying to deflect. He narrowed his eyes. "You've been acting weird lately. Is there something you want to tell me?" "No, nothing at all," I said, forcing a smile. "Just enjoying my birthday gifts, you know?" "Right," he replied, though I could see he wasn't convinced. As he walked away, I knew I had to be careful. The tension was thick, but I was no longer the same naive woman I had been just weeks ago. I was ready to fight back, to reclaim my life. With the pieces in place, I prepared myself for the confrontation ahead. I knew the truth would come out, and when it did, there would be no turning back. Little did I know that the road ahead would test my strength and resolve in ways I never imagined. The days turned into a blur of planning and gathering evidence, and I felt both anxious and empowered. I knew it was time to confront Daniel about everything I had discovered. The thought sent shivers down my spine, but I had to do it. I owed it to myself to fight for my truth. One evening, after a long day of gathering more evidence, I decided that tonight was the night. Daniel had a meeting after work, and I planned to confront him as soon as he returned. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my racing heart. When he walked through the door, I was waiting for him in the living room. His expression turned from surprise to confusion when he saw my serious demeanor. "Maya? What's going on?" he asked, closing the door behind him. I stood up, gathering all my strength. "We need to talk, Daniel," I said firmly. "About what?" He was already on the defensive, but I pressed on. "About you and Mia." "I know about the affair," I said, watching his face drain of color. His mouth opened slightly, and he stammered, "What are you talking about?" I pulled out my phone and showed him the picture of him and Mia from social media. "This. You think I wouldn't find out? You've been lying to me." His eyes narrowed as he quickly composed himself. "You're jumping to conclusions, Maya. That's just a friendly dinner," he said, attempting to deflect. "Friendly? Really? You expect me to believe that? You're married to me, and you're flaunting your relationship with your assistant on social media." My voice was shaking, but I refused to back down. "Look, I can explain," he began, but I cut him off. "Explain what? That you've been planning to leave me for her? That you've been stealing money from my business?" The words were spilling out now, each one a release of pent-up frustration and betrayal. His expression shifted from surprise to anger. "You don't know what you're talking about, Maya. This is all in your head. You're just being paranoid," he snapped. "Paranoid? Is that what you call it?" "I have proof, Daniel. You're in way over your head, and I won't let you manipulate me any longer," I retorted, my voice gaining strength. "Manipulate you? You think I'm the bad guy here? You're the one who never listens to me or takes me seriously," he shouted, his face flushed with rage. I stepped back, the intensity of the confrontation overwhelming me. "You're right about one thing. This isn't working. You've been controlling and emotionally abusive. I deserve better than this." I felt a sense of liberation as I spoke those words. Daniel's face darkened. "You think you can just walk away from this? You're nothing without me. You'll regret this," he warned, a menacing tone creeping into his voice. "I won't regret standing up for myself. I've spent too long being treated like I don't matter. I'm done being your victim," I said, feeling the weight of my resolve. "I'm taking action." His eyes flashed with anger, but beneath it, I saw a flicker of uncertainty. "You think you can take me on? You have no idea who you're dealing with," he sneered. "I know exactly who I'm dealing with," I said. "A coward hiding behind manipulation and lies." At that moment, I realized that the confrontation was only the beginning. I had the power to expose the truth, not just to Daniel, but to everyone who had ever doubted me. I would no longer allow him or his mother to dictate my life. With my heart racing, I stepped toward the door. "I'm contacting a lawyer and gathering everything I need. This isn't over, Daniel. You can't silence me anymore." As I walked away, I felt an overwhelming sense of relief, mixed with fear. I was stepping into uncharted territory, but I knew I had to keep moving forward. I would reclaim my life, no matter the cost. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but I was ready for the fight. The turning point was near, and I could feel the momentum building within me. I was determined to not only expose the truth, but to embrace my newfound strength. After that intense confrontation, I felt a surge of determination coursing through my veins. I had finally stood up for myself, but now I needed to follow through. The next day, I met with my lawyer to discuss my options in detail. As I sat in her office, I could feel the weight of the world lifting off my shoulders. Maya, it's crucial to gather as much evidence as possible. You mentioned financial discrepancies, she asked, her eyes focused on me. Yes, I suspect Daniel has been embezzling money from my company. He's always had access to our accounts, I explained, feeling a mix of anger and resolve. Let's start by obtaining bank statements and any correspondence related to your business. The more proof we have, the stronger your case will be, she advised, jotting down notes. As I left the office, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. I spent the next few days digging through documents, bank statements, and emails, searching for anything that could help me build my case. Every time I uncovered a new piece of evidence, my resolve grew stronger. With Olivia and Lisa by my side, I discovered that Daniel had been diverting funds from my business account into a separate account for months. The betrayal cut deep, but I channeled my pain into action. I knew I had to be prepared for the inevitable confrontation with him and the fallout that would follow. A week later, I received a call from my lawyer. Maya, we have enough evidence to proceed with filing for divorce and exposing Daniel's embezzlement. Are you ready for this? Absolutely, I replied, my voice steady. Let's do it. When the day finally arrived, I felt a mix of anxiety and excitement. It was time to face Daniel and reveal everything. I decided to invite him to our house, under the guise of wanting to talk things through. I knew it would be the perfect setting to unveil my plan. When Daniel arrived, he seemed surprised to see me sitting at the dining table, documents spread out before me. What's all this? He asked, his brows furrowing in confusion. I wanted to show you something important, I said, my heart racing. I've gathered evidence of your deceit and financial crimes. You can't run from this anymore. His expression shifted from confusion to panic. What are you talking about? He asked, his voice trembling. I have proof of the affair with Mia and the money you've been stealing from my company. You think I wouldn't find out? You've underestimated me. Daniel, I said, the weight of the words giving me strength. He stood up, his face flushed with anger. You think this will end well for you? You're making a big mistake, he hissed. Maybe it's a mistake to have ever trusted you, I replied, feeling empowered. I won't let you control my life any longer. You're going to face the consequences of your actions. Just then, there was a knock at the door. It was my lawyer and a couple of officers. Daniel Thompson, you are under arrest for embezzlement and domestic abuse, one of the officers announced, stepping inside. Daniel's face turned white as he realized the trap I had set for him. You can't do this, he shouted, but it was too late. As the officers cuffed him, I felt a sense of liberation wash over me. For the first time, I was no longer the victim. I was reclaiming my life. After they took him away, I felt a wave of relief, mixed with disbelief. I had done it. I had stood up for myself and exposed the truth. The darkness that had overshadowed my life for so long was finally lifting. In the weeks that followed, I focused on rebuilding my life. I poured my energy into my work and surrounded myself with supportive friends and family. I felt stronger, more independent, and ready to embrace my future. One evening, as I was working late in my studio, I paused to reflect on everything that had happened. I realized I had come full circle. I had faced my demons and emerged victorious. The road had been difficult, but I had found my voice and my strength. As I looked out the window at the setting sun, I felt a sense of peace. I was ready to write my own story, free from the shadows of the past. I knew that the journey of self-discovery had just begun, and I was excited to see where it would lead me next. I had learned that true empowerment comes from within, and I was finally ready to embrace my life on my own terms.
What? Morning already? I felt thirsty and opened my eyes to see the dazzling morning sun streaming in through the window. I'm John, 28 years old, just a regular single guy working at an advertising company. Yesterday, we had a company party. Perhaps I drank too much. I can't remember anything. I managed to wake up my lazy body, which still had some alcohol left in it, and looked around to find my tie and bag carelessly tossed on the floor. Perhaps I had let loose a little too much, being our first party in a while. With a pounding headache from the hangover, I stood there in a daze when suddenly my cell phone rang. The call was from my colleague Bob. "Hey John, good morning. You okay after last night?" Bob's voice on the other end of the phone sounded like he found something amusing. Maybe I messed up after all. Honestly, I'm a bit dizzy with this hangover. I can't remember anything from last night. Did I do something weird? No way. You don't remember doing all that. As the truth unfolded from Bob's words, my face turned redder by the minute. At last night's party, I met our junior colleague Emma after a long time. She was a sweet 24-year-old woman, a junior in the department I used to be a part of. However, for some reason, I had been keeping my distance from her. Apparently, Emma didn't find it amusing and took this opportunity to approach me. "Don't you think you've been a little cold lately, John? You used to be there for me." That's right. Being a senior in the same department, I often listened to Emma's worries. But she consulted me so often without considering my convenience, it was frankly bothersome. "I'm sorry, but I just switched departments, and frankly, I have enough on my plate right now. Plus, you have a boyfriend. He might worry if you're frequently dining alone with another man, don't you think?" Yes, Emma had a boyfriend, yet she kept insisting on talking and inviting me to bars and restaurants. I listened to her complaints, and because of our positions, I ended up paying every time. Looking back, I might have been taken advantage of in the past. However, I was swallowed up by her strong pace and was at her beck and call. Tonight, however, I managed to express my intentions with the help of alcohol. I drank too much due to the tension, and my memory cut off from there. According to Bob, she seemed clearly discontent with my words. "So, you won't listen to me anymore, John?" "That's right. I think it's for the best." Even to an outsider, Emma seemed too persistent. I was getting tired of it. Then she provocatively said, "You refuse my talks, but you're often out with department head Catherine, aren't you? Isn't that unfair? She's indeed beautiful, but somewhat aloof, and she's 9 years older than me. Oh, you're not by any chance attracted to Catherine, are you?" "Don't badmouth Catherine." According to Bob, I abruptly cut her off by slamming my beer glass on the table. Emma, who only knew my usual calm demeanor, was taken aback by my sudden change. But the surprise didn't end there. Incredibly, I made a shocking statement at the party. Yes, that's right. I love my department manager. You just don't know it, Emma. The manager, in reality, is really cute. Who cares if she's older? Who cares about her position? I love her. I can't stand it. I'm crazy about her. Just saying it was enough to make me blush. But what was really bad was that at that moment, the manager was standing right behind me. She was late to the drinking party because she had errands that day, and she came at the absolute worst possible timing. After that, I drank too much and blacked out, falling on the spot. Bob somehow got me home by taxi. Listening to the whole story made me despair at my own reckless behavior, but Bob seemed to enjoy it till the end. To be honest, the way you interfered with Emma ruined the fun atmosphere of the drinking party. Listening to what you, John, said felt so refreshing. Maybe the manager was happy to receive a once-in-a-lifetime confession like that. No, there's no way, right? If it's just me embarrassing myself, it would have been fine. But to even get the section chief in trouble is another story. This situation developed, but the trigger goes back 6 months ago when I was transferred to the advertising department. The manager of the advertising department, Catherine, became my immediate boss. She is 33, 5 years older than me, and single. She has beautiful dark brown glossy hair tied back and beautiful features with cat-like eyes shining in a deep brown color. She stood out even in the office. Not only her work, but also the way she dressed in a suit on her slender figure was dazzling. And she had many fans in the company, regardless of gender. I was glad to be able to work under such an excellent person. But it seemed that she did not have a good impression of me and actually said this to me. "John, please stop messing up the relationships within the department. Currently, it seems like you're having a relationship with a female employee who has a boyfriend. Apparently, she thinks that I'm having a relationship with Emma. But as I mentioned before, I was just listening to her story. I tried to explain the details, but she said, 'That's enough,' and cut off my explanation, so the misunderstanding was never cleared up. Actually, I've been approached by many women besides Emma for advice on their problems. I'm not popular with women. I'm just valued as a conversation partner. I myself thought that I might be in this role for the rest of my life, and I was about to give up on romance. The last time I dated a woman was 7 years ago when I was a junior in college. That was when my ex-girlfriend, Nancy, suddenly said, 'I found someone I like, so I want to break up.' I was shocked, but Nancy proposed, 'I don't want to be lovers anymore, but I hope we can be good friends.' I feel very calm when I talk to you, John." As for me, I couldn't hate Nancy, so I said, "Let's do that," with a smile. Looking back now, I was just pretending to be tough, and I might have wanted to show her my good side. I should have just cut off ties with her when we broke up, but because of my false pride, I ended up being manipulated by my ex-girlfriend, just like now. In the past, I've always been weak to pressure, and for women, I've always just been a good guy who'd never become their first choice. That was the pattern. Well, my looks aren't what you would call handsome, so it can't be helped. One day, a month after I was assigned to the advertising department, the manager and I were left in the office working overtime in an awkward atmosphere, as usual. We had received a request for an art exhibition advertisement from a client, and the two of us were creating flyers for the exhibition. In addition to the exhibition of famous art prints, there would also be posters and related goods for sale. The two of us were each staring at a computer, trying to create an attractive flyer that would entice customers to buy, but there was no one else in the office, and it was awkward to just work silently. Thinking that it might start a conversation, I glanced at the manager, and she was staring at a postcard printed with a painting called Water Lilies by Monet, which was one of the sales items for the art exhibition. Thinking it might start a conversation, I said, "It's a beautiful painting," and she brightened her eyes and began to talk happily in a way that was completely different from usual. "Isn't it? Monet is an impressionist painter, and he has painted many pictures of water lilies. This painting on the postcard is owned by the boss of a museum of art." She talked about Monet passionately for a while. It was the first time I saw her, who was usually cool, talking so much, and I was surprised at her rich knowledge about art. However, after a while, she made a face as if she realized something and said, "I'm sorry, I talked too much," blushing and looking down. "Why are you apologizing?" I asked. I didn't know what kind of painter Monet was, so I found her explanation really interesting. I also secretly thought it was cute how our section chief got so passionate talking about what she loved. But she said, "Enough with the pleasantries," and shook her head side to side while blushing. I know, when it comes to talking about art, I just can't help but get excited. That's perfectly fine. If we're working in advertising, knowledge of art is absolutely essential. Our conversation continued to flow naturally, and we were able to make significant progress on our flyer. As the overtime for the day was wrapping up, I decided to be bold and asked the manager, "Would you like to go for a drink?" I thought that since we had warmed up to each other, having a drink would deepen our relationship even further. Initially, the manager squinted at me with a skeptical look. "Well, aren't you involved with your junior colleague, Emma? You don't plan on making a move on an older woman like me, do you?" "No, not at all." Emma is infatuated with her boyfriend, and I'm just someone she talks to. Really? Well, that's okay. I'm not that kind of woman. We'll have our drink and then head straight home. Despite the manager's initial weariness, we managed to have a drink together at a local bar. The manager seemed to enjoy her draft beer and loosened up enough to talk about art as she had before. She had studied art history in college, and I found her stories fascinating. She seemed to finally let her guard down since I made no further advances. As we left the bar, she said, "I had a great time." I, too, enjoyed spending time with the manager. From that day forward, the walls between us came down. We were able to work more smoothly while maintaining open communication. Whenever our schedules matched up, we would go for drinks. It became our regular activity. One day, the manager opened up to me. "I misunderstood you, John. I've heard from other employees that you often get consulted by female staff about their problems. I had an unfair prejudice against you, and I've been cold towards you." And I truly regret that I smiled and said to the deeply apologetic manager, "No worries at all." When someone hears that you're alone with female employees, it's a common assumption. But now I can understand why Emma feels the way she does. Just talking with you, John, is healing in its own way. The manager shared her past trauma with me. "You know how I get really excited and talk nonstop when it comes to art? My previous partner found that repulsive. He didn't expect me to be so talkative because I appear to be a reserved person. It was a shock when he broke up with me because of that, so I've been trying to keep quiet ever since. Looking back, I've been treating you the same way I was treated. It was wrong of me to form a negative image of you before getting to know you. I never imagined that the manager had such a past. She had been pretending to be someone she wasn't after being rejected for being her true self. I would never do that. That's because I genuinely like the manager just the way she is. Spending time together, she became someone special to me before I knew it. Catherine, I think you're incredibly charming just the way you are. We've managed to understand each other like this, so let's let bygones be bygones. Please, I'd love for you to continue sharing about art with me." And my words made Catherine smile genuinely. "Because you're such a good listener, John. You also satisfy my frustrations that I've been holding back for so long, so I'm really grateful. But recently, I've been a little worried about you. You've been frequently asked out by Emma, and you're paying for her meals, aren't you? I think it's a bit different if you listen to her concerns once in a while. You're right. I've been feeling stressed about my relationship with Emma, so I think I'm going to distance myself a bit. Until now, I could only find my sense of self-worth by being close to someone. But since meeting Catherine and falling in love, I've come to want to spend my precious time with my special person. That's how I came to the events of last night. Having fallen in love with Catherine, I tried to keep a distance from Emma, but I never thought I would make such a blunder while drunk. I was beating myself up over it, but I decided to apologize to Catherine first and nervously made a call. Catherine must have been appalled because I went on a drinking spree. Listening to the dial tone with a bad feeling in my chest, Catherine answered the phone quicker than I expected. "Hello, Catherine. I'm really sorry about yesterday. My thoughtless actions have caused you trouble. I know an apology won't cut it, but please let me get down on my knees." "Whoa, John, calm down. There's no need for you to do that. Just calm down." As soon as I heard Catherine's voice over the receiver, I blurted out an apology. From the tone of her voice, it didn't seem like she was angry. Instead, Catherine said something unexpected. "I'm actually on my way to your apartment right now. You seemed really drunk yesterday, and I thought your handover must have been rough. I'm coming to check on you. I brought some stuff, so let me in." I hadn't expected Catherine to come to my place. 10 minutes later, the intercom rang, and Catherine had bought not only food, but also mineral water and paints. "I'm sorry for making you worry." "No, it's fine. You've always been so good to me. You drank a little too much last night, didn't you?" You don't look so good. You should get some rest today. Catherine said that and comforted me with kind words. But the words, "You drank too much," stuck in my chest. Probably, she interpreted my words last night as, "He couldn't help it because he was drunk," and was silently signaling, "I don't mind." But I wanted to convey my feelings properly. Catherine, even though I don't remember anything from yesterday, everything I said at the party is true. Huh. When she heard my words, Catherine looked at me with a surprised face. I quickly started speaking to change the atmosphere while blushing. But of course, I understand if it's impossible. I'm happy just being by your side, Catherine. If we can continue to work together from now on, that's more than enough. So please forget what I just said. While I was talking, Catherine hugged me tightly. For a moment, I couldn't understand what was happening, but Catherine was crying, saying, "I'm happy." I was really happy about what you said yesterday, but I thought I shouldn't take it seriously, so I was acting defensive. I never thought you felt the same way about me, John. Huh. You like me too. Yes, spending time with you, I've grown to like you. Not as a subordinate, but as a man. But you were so kind, John. I've always told myself not to expect anything from that kindness. I've been so mean, advising you to keep your distance from Emma because I wanted you all to myself. I'm just awful, aren't I? Tears streamed down her face as I held her. Like I said before, I love you just as you are, Catherine. I'm incredibly happy that you feel that way about me. We savored our happiness, holding each other tightly. A year after we confessed our feelings to each other, I invited Catherine into a French restaurant for our first anniversary and proposed to her there. "Marry me," I said, handing her a diamond ring. Catherine beamed with joy. What a romantic proposal. My heart's racing because when I confessed my feelings, I was so hammered that I couldn't remember it. I wanted to etch the words of my proposal in my brain. I can see that I will never forget today, even after decades of being married to you. I know that as long as I'm with you, we'll make many wonderful memories together.